Welcome to the Hockey Writers Flames Faceoff, a weekly show with our top Calgary Flames writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the Flaming Sea. So get set, get focused. It's time for the Flames Faceoff. Flames Faceoff. Flames Faceoff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Quinney, and this is the Flames Faceoff, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. Now, we're a weekly show, and to make sure you don't miss an episode, what you can do is subscribe to this YouTube channel, and do be sure to give us a follow on Twitter and Facebook. And if you like what you see, like us on YouTube and Facebook, and be sure to share this video with your fellow Calgary Flames fans. We have with us, as we usually do this week, our Calgary fans face-off panelists, Greg Tysowski and Brett Krauss. Welcome, gentlemen. We've got a busy lineup this week, so let's get right into it. I think if there's one headline for the week, it would be one word, and that's COVID-19. Not much else to talk about here. The Flames, with the Flames having their schedule suspended this week and not scheduled as of today to play until December 27th against the Oilers in the Saddle Dome, and I wouldn't bank on that one happening. The Flames will have missed 6 games, and because of COVID-19. And the last figure I saw was that 32 members of the Calgary Flames organization were in COVID protocol, whatever that means. I'm assuming they tested positive, but the NHL has its own nomenclature. Don't know why they just can't come out and say whether they, tested positive or negative. But be that as it may, 19 players, essentially the whole team, has tested positive, 9 support staff, 1 member of the training staff, and 3 coaches, including Daryl Sutter. It's probably the worst outbreak, as I understand it, that the NHL has ever seen of COVID-19, and arguably it may be one of the worst in professional sports, at least among the big 4 professional sports organizations in North America. So, gentlemen, with that as the backdrop, the question I have for you is, do you think this shutdown how do you think it's going to affect the Flames for the rest of the season? We know it's got to have some effect, but, there's a number of things, I suppose, that the Flames organization needs to worry about. Greg, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts? How's it going to have an impact on the team?
Well, I think the impact is like twofold, because there's a kind of an immediate impact and then there's kind of long-term impact. The immediate impact is, they're going to be a team that resumes play with very little practice time. And depending on how the symptoms affected the players, they won't be really in game shape, regardless of, if they've practiced or not. So we all saw how the Ottawa Senators didn't come out of their canceled games very well, and the Flames, I think, are a better team, so it's possible they'll fare better than the Ottawa Senators did. But so that's the short-term impact, is just they can't get back to speed very quickly, and they're probably going to lose a few more games and extend this losing streak. But the long-term is, they would have to compress their schedule, so much that they're going to be playing every second night pretty much until the end of the season, and that's going to be tough. And they already had a really terrible schedule to start the season. And Daryl Sutter was very vocal about complaining about the NHL schedule makers, how they had this crazy road trip. So I think the Flames, the whole situation is they're really in tough now for the rest of the season, because this is, the short-term and long-term effects are not good. And if they can come out of this, still a winning team and a playoff team, I would be very impressed, because they're kind of under the gun now.
Yeah. Brett, your thoughts? I would have said they're a contender for the Stanley Cup until all of this happened. What are you thinking?
Yeah. I think that 2 weeks it looks like they'll be off is definitely going to hurt them. I think they were saying that the December 27th game against Edmonton, that's the first day that a few of them can come out of the protocol now. So I think, they're going to be in tough. I mean, if the NHL has them play that first game against Edmonton, you might as well just write that off as a scheduled loss for the team, because I don't assume they're going to practice until that game if, some guys are still in protocol on Boxing Day. So, I'm kind of looking at this as, they can't practice. They can't go to the team, gym at the Saddle Dome. They can't really do anything. They're kind of all stuck at home. So, and, once again, we were talking last week how they were on the road a lot, and they've already played a lot of games, and now they're going to have to play even more games in a compressed schedule. So it could have a huge impact, I think, on how this team finishes the season.
Yeah. Greg, what about, from a standpoint of fairness? If I put my NHL hat on and I just look at this train wreck on the schedule caused by COVID, how's the league going to handle the perception that teams aren't being treated fairly? I mean, if you put Calgary back and insist that they make up the games they missed, and other teams who have been to this point unscathed, thankfully, by COVID, it looks like they get a free ride. How much of that do you think is weighing on the New York, where the executive is, their thinking?
I really don't know if they really, care that much about being fair at this point. I think the NHL is so stuck on trying to get this season in on time and in the original scheduling, because I think they really don't want to push things back. I know COVID changes everything, but they had to play the Stanley Cup really late a couple of years ago, in the bubble and everything, and it's just I think they're really hoping to get their league, their schedule, everything back on track, and this could really throw a wrench into those plans. So I think the NHL will do whatever it takes, whatever they can, to kind of keep things on the rails with their original timelines, their original scheduling, for as long as they possibly can. Now, if there's going to be other outbreaks like this, like I was reading online today that there's actually quite a few teams who have already missed, who will miss 4 or more games. There's some with 4, some with 5. Calgary leads the way with 6. But if you keep pushing this and there's more and more teams are missing 6 games, 7 games, or how do you make those up and still keep the schedule on track? Like at some point, something's got to give. So is it fair right now? No, but I think the NHL wants to try and do what they can to keep things on track, no matter who pays the price for it. And right now it's going to be the Flames.
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably right, Greg. I was reading an article about the English Premier League, and I realized that's nothing to do with hockey, but some franchise suggested that they put a pause on it. And it was, let me think about that. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. So they're going to forge through here. Greg, what are your thoughts? Do you think the NHL cares, or is the objective just, carry on and, get all the games in that we can and all the revenue that we can?
I think you meant Brett, I think, right?
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
It's, I've kind of looked at it that this is going to take several seasons to get the schedule back on track, in my opinion. I think because we're going to see these postponements, and I kind of look at it as I think they're just going to have to extend the regular season, add all these postponed games in at the end. It's, starting to look definitely like NHL will not go to the Olympics. So you have 2 weeks there. Maybe you throw in a couple games, or maybe you give the players a rest at this point. That's, to be determined. But I think we're going to see the playoffs, extend into July for the next season or two. I think that's just the way it's going to have to be, just to kind of iron out all the wrinkles, and then, in say two seasons or so, they'll finally be back into their regular October to the middle of June sort of scheduling. I think that's kind of the way I look at it, is just, it's going to have to be like that.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. What do you think, Greg? I know the answer to this in the NHL's mind, but, ethically, should they pause the season, given everything they face? If for no other reason than safety of players and fans. I mean, when you look at Toronto, well, they're still stuffing 10,000 fans into their arena in Calgary. I guess it's full speed ahead, right? Full house. What are your thoughts? Should they pause it?
Well, I've seen a lot of stuff written about this, and it's funny. I just read today that Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman was saying there was some chatter about maybe suspending cross-border games until after Christmas, just to kind of like help slow down the pandemic. So I think the NHL is thinking about, possibilities and what they can do. And if they do suspend the season for even a couple of weeks, I think Brett is 100% right. I don't think they can make up those games during the Olympic break if the Olympics don't happen for the NHL. I think then all bets are off, and I think the season has to be extended and playoffs get pushed and everything like that. So I know the NHL doesn't want to do that desperately, but the right thing to do, I think, would be to pause the season. Like it's not it's kind of just they call it a circuit breaker when they shut things down, in the general population if cases get too high. And right now, it's running rampant right now. Like there's like something like 19% of the league or something crazy like that of players are in protocol right now. So I don't know. They may be forced to do it, whether they like it or not, even though I know they don't want to do it, but they should do it. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What do you think, Brett? Do you think they would ethically take a decision to shut it down, or would they be looking for some sort of cover from government, a regulation?
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty tough question that's racking a lot of brains at the head office in New York right now, because it's just kind of like, what do you do? You're sitting there and these guys are in protocol, but like we've seen from reporters with the Flames that only a couple of guys are moderately sick and pretty much everyone else is asymptomatic. And I think this time around you're seeing a lot more sort of kind of guys having a little bit of pushback to protocols. And, I think that just comes from sort of COVID fatigue, as they call it, from being in this for almost 2 years. And, I think people are seeing that they're asymptomatic and they're saying, well, why do I have to be in protocol? I'm vaccinated and everything. So it's kind of an interesting time. And, I think the right thing to do would be to try to do the circuit breaker and get it under control, because you don't really know what could happen if you just kind of keep going and what could happen. So yeah, I think that's a tough question, but I think even at this point it seems like the NHL is just going to try and do their best to push through this, and hopefully they're kind of hoping they come out clean on the other side.
Yeah. Well, Yzerman raised that today. I saw a tweet. It probably came out an hour or so ago, asking that very question, why are we testing healthy guys? And I guess his inference was, well, maybe they're infected, maybe they're not, but the point is that they can play. Now, I'm not sure where Stevie did his advanced studies in infectious disease, but be that as it may, that's his opinion. And I think that, I think you're right, that view will take hold. But you guys have raised it. One way to recover the season or make it easier from a scheduling standpoint is to cancel the Olympics. Given the circumstances in which the league and the players find themselves, do you think that's a possibility? Now, my understanding is that it's up to the NHL Players Association to make that call, but the league, under certain circumstances, has an override ability. They themselves can cancel it. Greg, what are your thoughts? Would you press that button at this point, canceling the Olympics?
I know that's $1 million question. Everyone is asking, if and when the NHL is going to do this. It might just be a matter of, the decision will be made for them. Like if they do end up pausing the season, I think it's the Olympics are done. And because, when you have like 20% or who knows how many percent, a quarter of your league infected, like I just think they would be able to pull it off. And there are questions about the quarantine protocols in China. Like if Connor McDavid gets infected with COVID-19, they were suggesting anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks of quarantine in China. Like that is, and he said that was very problematic for him and for anybody, and so the league needs answers, and they need China to clarify all of this. And it's kind of a mess right now because, if it wasn't for this latest Omicron variant, I think it would be a slam dunk. They'd be going regardless of any human rights, issues, and the NHL is there to do business. And so, but this new surge in cases has really thrown a wrench in everything. So I really don't know what they're going to do. I just think in the next couple of weeks, we'll have clarity on what's going to happen, because they have to kind of pull the trigger either to pull out of the Olympics or to commit to it, because it's getting close. It's in February. So things have to happen quickly if they're going to change their mind on this.
Yeah. Well, a guy like Connor McDavid, I'm sure the Chinese would extend it. That would be a pleasant stay, being an honored guest of the Chinese government. Well, how long did you say? 15 days or?
3 to 5 weeks is possibly that they'd have to stay in China if they get infected, which is crazy.
Yeah. Brett, what's your thought? Are your thoughts on that? If you make it to the Canadian Olympic team or any other Olympic team for that matter, would you go under the current circumstances, knowing that you could be a honored guest of the Chinese government for 3 weeks?
I think me personally, that would be a no-go. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of guys, but 5 weeks in a hotel 10 minutes down the road from my own home in Calgary, Alberta would not be a pleasant time. So let alone in another country on the other side of the ocean. So, politics aside, but yeah, I think it's looking more and more like it's not going to happen. I think I forget who the reporter was, but they had said they had talked to several players, and there were guys that were, absolutely no go. And there were guys that said, no matter what, I want to go play in the Olympics. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But right now I'm kind of leaning that I think the players themselves are going to say no and not go.
Yeah. I don't want to digress too much, but it was always a curiosity for me. I think there are 700 players in the league, maybe more, and only a handful are going to go to the Olympics. But, somehow the players rally around the flag and demand that they be allowed to play in the Olympics. Do you think it's really all that important for all but the most elite of players in the league? I don't get why it's so important to them. Greg, your thoughts on that? Is that a surprise to you in any way?
Well, it is ever since they started letting professional athletes compete in the Olympics, there's been such a hullabaloo about these teams. I remember whether it's, in basketball, with these dream teams they put together, or in hockey, or, it just seems like there's so much of a laser focus on these hockey teams and at the Olympics. And I know, and you recall 4 years ago, the NHL did not go. And we had guys like former Flame Rene Bourque was like a superstar playing for Team Canada. And we could see that again. But I think the interest, without NHLers, drops off considerably. And I think kind of the rabid hockey fans want to see best on best, and I want to see best on best too, when they hold this World Cup of hockey, it's not quite the same thing. It's just kind of this manufactured tournament that the NHL puts on. And, it's not the Olympics, it's not the gold medal. And ever since, Canada has been competing with NHLers, like whether it's Sidney Crosby's, golden goal in Vancouver, or in Salt Lake City. There's something about the Olympics that these players, they want to go. All the top players, I think, especially in Europe as well, like guys like Alex Ovechkin, I think he would go regardless. I remember 4 years ago, he was threatening to go, even though there was no NHLers. And so some guys in here, it's a big deal, that's especially, for the high end players who get to compete. So I'm not surprised that there's such a passion to get to this best on best tournament.
Yeah. I mean, Brett, on Olympic participation, have you been surprised at all that, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? The ethical side of participating in the Olympics in a country like China, we haven't heard a peep from the NHL. It doesn't seem to bother them about the nature of the regime in China. I thought there may have been some pushback when with Peng Shuai, the female tennis star that was accused a senior member of the Chinese government of having raped her essentially, and she was detained under house arrest, it looks like. But not a word came out of the NHL. To be fair to the NHL, no other professional league spoke up about it. Were you surprised by that? Any thoughts on whether the NHL should take stands on like that on international tournaments hosted by unsavory regimes like the Chinese regime?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a tough question to answer, because I think whenever the governing body of tennis pulled out all the tournaments in China, which I think was the right move, and but I also think sort of politically that's not the greatest thing to be protesting if you're about to go to China. I mean, we just saw 2 Canadians that finally came home after being in jail for 2 or 3 years in China. And I don't even really know too much about that story, but, so it's kind of a, scary thing. I mean, the government in China has known to been doing a lot of shady things. And so I think, yes, it would be good to stand up to it and protest, but if you're going to end up going there, it's definitely, I would be looking over my shoulder every 10, 20 seconds, because you never know what they're going to do. They don't care that you're Connor McDavid and you're a superstar for the Edmonton Oilers. If you spoke out against them and now you're in China, that's it'd be a pretty scary thing. So I think the tennis the federation handled it very well, but yeah, I think seeing from an NHL standpoint, it's kind of hard to say. I think they definitely should, but if they have these, I don't like seeing the athletes being part of, these political ventures at some point, because, they don't really know much about the situation. They're just there to play hockey. So I think it's unfair to a lot of guys, but to kind of be put in that position, oh, well, you should protest what they're doing. And I'm sure they think that, it's obviously awful, but it's kind of a hard position to be put in if you're about to be sent over there to participate in the Olympics and, kind of have these thoughts, because, they see what they've done to Peng Shuai there for just for having kind of speaking out against the government. So yeah, it's a tough position for sure.
Yeah, well, Greg, you made a comment earlier. The NHL is in the business of hockey. It's a business. Your thoughts on that? Should they get involved in, social and political issues at the international level, or at any level for that matter? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's, ethically and morally, it's the right thing to do. But, business wise, I think the NHL would be, quite concerned and quite scared to do that, because I was reading about the NBA had some kind of issue with China, and there was some streaming platform that pulled a bunch of NBA games, it was worth like hundreds of millions of dollars to the NBA. And,
in fact, yeah.
And for China to pull this TV coverage here from the NBA, the NBA is scrambling to kind of apologize. And even just on a kind of an unrelated note, even Hollywood movie stars have gotten into trouble. I remember, former wrestler, Hollywood star John Cena made some comment in a press tour about Taiwan inadvertently, and he had to bend over backwards to release apologetic statements to the Chinese government, just so. And I don't know, maybe they were threatening to do something with movie distribution or something, but they hold so much economic clout as like they're like the next economic superpower, and everybody is just afraid to get on their bad side. And so this is why I think they're emboldened by when people call them out for the human rights violations, they don't bat an eye. They don't, they just say, do your worst. And they almost dare you to impose sanctions or boycott them, because then they have something in their back pocket, like that NBA deal or that they yanked away from them, that makes it almost impossible to stand up to them. That's why I really applaud the women's tennis tour for doing this, because to actually do something like that and pull out of these tournaments in that country was a pretty bold move, and I applaud them. But you didn't see anyone following suit, so they're kind of standing alone. So, yeah,
well, interesting you mentioned the NBA, because if I have my facts right, that canceled TV deal, they've since put it back together. They had to apologize, as you point out, but that cost them $5 billion. I was astonished to learn that there are actually more basketball fans in China than there are in the United States. So, but thinking through this thing, the NHL's revenues from China at this point are minuscule. A figure I saw was only $5 million. So, if I'm sitting in New York in the head office, what I would worry about with Peng Shui is if there's a kind of a Me Too backlash in China, and then you've got, 40% of your fans in the NHL, according to the NHL itself, are women, you can see where you'd be caught between the demands of the Chinese and then the demands of your fan base in North America. And I think fans of any sport, any business, I think of my kids, and they're in their 30s, and they just demand, they want to patronize businesses that align with their values, and things like sexual equality, racism, all those things are important to them. So I don't know with the NHL how they navigate that from a business standpoint, leaving the ethics aside. But well, it'll be interesting. I will probably have a decision on the Olympics, according to the NHL, in the next couple of days. But gentlemen, unfortunately, we've run out of time here. But as always, it was a great discussion. And thank you, everybody, for joining us again for another episode of the Flames Faceoff. And this will be our last show before the new year. We'll be back January 2nd. And with another episode of the Flames Faceoff. And I just wanted to say on behalf of, Greg and Brett and Colton and the other, guests we've had on this year, it's been our first year that we really appreciate you tuning in, so to speak, to our show. We're grateful for the comments. We've really enjoyed doing this, and would like to take this opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Solstice, a happy whatever you're going to be celebrating at this time of year, and also a Happy New Year. And again, just thanks for supporting the show and what we do here. We really enjoy it and look forward to doing it again next year. So until January 2nd, take care.